You're listening to Ace Comicals. I'm Rahul, and today I'm joined by my co-host Leon. Let's go! Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ace Comicals. I'm Rahul Jani. We're here without our dear leader, Greg, today, but he's left us a note in his absence. I can't do a Greg accent. Can you do a Greg accent, Leon?
I can't do any. You're from Leicester.
I'm from Leicester, but I ain't got. He doesn't have like full-on Leicester accent. I'll do it in Leicester accent. I was hoping to be here, but I'm tearing my bathroom to bits and reshaping, reconfiguring it. So maybe not. I wish I had the power to alter things with minimal mess or disruption. Fuck not having a shower. It's like being at a festival, but in your own home. Buy comics. Peace out. Nice. I love that. Yeah, it sucks not having a shower. So he's like tearing his bathroom to bits and stuff right now. He's been sending us photos. It looks like a combination of really fun but really awful at the same time. But then that's kind of what being a homeowner is all about, I suppose.
Yeah, it seems so. His bathroom looks like it's in The Last of Us mode currently.
Yeah, I can't wait to see. It's like everything is completely empty except for the toilet, and to me it feels like he's saving it till last, and he's going to smash it with a mallet or something. But I don't think that's what he's doing. But I can't wait to see it when it's all not in a state of disrepair. And yeah, good luck, I guess. Best of luck, Greg.
He's wasting no time.
He is wasting no time. Good on him for adulting, way better than we are. So we're here in sunny England, and I say that sarcastically because it's pissing down with rain today, to bring you some chatter about comics, I guess. So let's get into it. Leon, how have you been in the last couple of weeks since we last spoke?
I've been good. I have. It's hard at times because you want to read stuff that you can talk about properly on the podcast, but at times you want to sneak in something or read stuff that you know you're not going to be able to talk about properly. So I've been like, after, I don't want to really get into it now properly as well because I want Greg to be here so we can actually have a proper conversation about it. But obviously Netflix's Lock and Key started airing on there a few weeks ago, and after watching that, it really gave me a taste to go back to the comics that I've read several times before. So I've been rereading those. I got my sister to start reading them as well because she watched the show and wanted more after me saying that you need to read the book now.
Nice.
So I've been doing that, but I will save my thoughts on the show until Greg's here because I think the three of us will have differing opinions overall on the show itself. But yeah, I've been basically doing that and reading some interesting things, but a lot of it is in preparation for future stuff. So I'll tease that. How about yourself?
Yeah, I can relate to that part. Certainly the preparing for upcoming episodes, which we're not going to reveal too soon. But the Lock and Key thing, it's a shame that we've not been on the cast together for a while because me and Greg watched it basically as soon as it came out. I think you've caught up since then, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Is it worth asking just general yardstick of like how you felt, thumbs up, thumbs down? Because I'm going to reveal now. I think I'm basically thumbs down on the show. Don't know how you feel.
As usual, for me, I've got nuanced feelings on that. So there's elements for me that are thumbs down, but there's elements for me that are thumbs up, which is why it'll be an interesting conversation, I think.
I think it will be, yeah. So let's save it for then. And what I will say is that it really has given me the taste to want to go back and reread the books again, which I haven't done, but it sounds like you've dived into that.
Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. Like I was just flipping through some of the art. I was like Googling for it because I was reading articles about differences between the show and the book and all of that. And, like it did reignite some of that passion. I saw a tweet the other day from Joe Hill saying how he's aware that the books are back ordered on Amazon right now, but urging people to go to their local comic book shop and pick them up. Which I'd like to echo the same sentiment. It's always worth if you can't find it just from your easy, cheap Amazon Prime delivery, go into a shop and pick it up. They have them in, I'm sure they have them in your local library. They definitely have them in our local Waterstones, which is like our our local bookshop, Borders, etc. Because it's so popular. I've seen it on the shelves there for a long time now. But yeah, go pick it up. It's definitely worth it, especially if you even slightly enjoy the show. Or if you liked elements of the show, you'll definitely like the book.
Well, that's the thing. That this is what I mean. Even more so when I say, "Oh, it was so good." Like we know, and I know you know that the books are amazing, but they hit even better once you've watched the show. For reasons to do with the thumbs up and for reasons to do with the thumbs down. So I don't know. It's like not to be like a snobby book reader thing, because it's not really that, but there's just something that the books give you that is more satisfying than what you get from the show, and that's not even just to do with however you feel on it, but it's just the way how a TV show is constructed. It can't spend loads of time on certain things; it has to pick and choose. Whereas the book lets you sort of live in certain concepts, and it doesn't have to worry about a budget in terms of it doesn't have to worry about a budget in terms of like scale and production costs. Just I guess a budget of time, but like between them, like Rodriguez and Hill, like, really put in the time and the effort, and I know it's very rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. I would echo that sentiment that I guess the book just had to make fewer compromises and can luxuriate in its story. It's very good. I would highly recommend it. So any other non-comic-y topics that you want to cover before we dive into our first comic?
There's things I could talk about, but I'm gonna hold those back.
Okay, can I know what they are? Just so because if I'm interested, I'll dive in.
No, because it's more like rando, like movie noise and information and stuff like that. So.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, when you got the squad, that's when we can delve in.
Hey all, cutting in quickly because I forgot to mention the 3 books that Greg had read over the last couple of weeks that he asked me to shout out. The first one is called Strange Skies Over East Berlin. That's by Jeff Loveness, artist Lisandro Esteron, colorist Patricio Del Pesce, and letterer Steve Wands. The second book is Alienated, number 1. It's a Boom Studios book. That is by Simon Spurrier, artist Chris Wildgoose, colorist Andre May, and letterer Jim Campbell. And the third one is a DC comic which is called Plunge number 1, which is written by Joe Hill and art by Stuart Immonen and Dan McCade. So the first comic we wanted to talk about was Griffin. We've talked about Griffin in the past. I believe in episode number 65, Greg interviewed the creator, Ben Kahn, and they were talking about, I think, the first few issues at that time. As of February 26th, when this episode will come out, issue number 11 will be out. And that is the... what's the word I'm thinking of? Where it's the one before the final.
Penultimate.
Penultimate, thank you. Brain fart. Penultimate issue is out on February 26th, and then the conclusion, will be out on April the 8th. So I'd actually talked about Griffin in the past after Greg had interviewed Ben, and I really enjoyed it at the time. I think I'd read up to issues 5, maybe 6, but you hadn't actually read them, had you, Leon, at that point?
No, I had not. And actually, it's worked out pretty well because diving in now has been great, because now I don't have to wait to see things wrapped up, and it's quite a nice feeling to be, especially for a book that you've been enjoying. And I pretty much consumed all of this in a short space of time, so it's been a nice continuous sort of engagement in this story. And it's been nice to do it, but like I can see how it definitely has the hooks in there where like between issues they'll keep you coming back for more, because it can be a page turner, but in a way where you quickly get invested in characters and want to see where it goes, and it brings up a lot of really intriguing and like messy concepts and tries to wade through them with these characters as honest as possible.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think where I'd left off. Let me think about this. So when I left Captain Griffin in issue 5, maybe 6, I think it was, they'd been. Let me rattle this off. I think they'd been labeled a traitor. They'd escaped their trial. They'd stolen an unwitting hostage / accomplice, freed their boyfriend, rescued a scientist who was interested in crazy science, and then like Falcon punched themselves onto a planet to liberate it. And that's like a lot of plot to cover in just 6 issues. And like that's one thing I really, really like about this is the pace of the series. It's constantly something happening. It's not taking that much time to breathe, which I really like because there's times when I want to sort of wallow in the sense of a thing, and I'll get to that later because that's how I feel about the next book I'm going to talk about. But the fact that there's this relentless pace in Griffin really, I don't know, it just really works for me. And like issue number 7, where I picked off because I didn't reread the old ones, I just picked up where I carried on. And like issue number 7 just resumes the adventure, and it's off to save a new planet, and it's just more horny rogue reluctant hero Starfleet crew thing, which I really like. And like the thing I've noticed by just whizzing through it is that I don't know, the book, it continues to be like a really blunt soundbite for an anti-fascist agenda with the backdrop of anarchic violence, which honestly I'm kind of here for. I really like that. I like that it's quite bold and in your face. And it may also be about like the dangers of blind non-consequentialism, but I haven't really spent too much time thinking about that. I'm not 100% sure where it stands on that yet anyway. It's sort of just touched upon it, but I don't know if you have any thoughts on that aspect of it, Leon.
Yeah, I definitely think there are a lot of like, I don't know what the word is, like pained concepts, or like it's asking questions and through various characters about what their role is and what the consequences are of certain actions. And I think that it's not really like, from where it is at the moment, it doesn't feel like it's specifically falling down on one foot or the other, but generally saying that action is better than inaction, and but we need to consider the consequences of actions. And you get a lot of cool moments of characters butting heads with that, because they as a group are doing a lot of good. But there's even an acknowledgement that like our actions could have created another like create a civil war in the future, but like it's ridiculous to have inaction for fear of that stuff. Like you got to take the boot off people's necks, even if like, I don't know, in a 50 years time or whatever, there's a different shaped boot on the neck. It's better to have done something, but then it delves into what to be mindful of. And yeah, I think it's the thing I like about it is that it's not it doesn't appear to be super didactic with that, and it's more presenting like interesting discussion to be had around that, but like not holding back on, say, the fun and the humor while doing so. And I'm interested to see where it goes in the finale, because I'm not expecting like loads of those elements to sort of wrap up, because I think like real life, all that stuff is very messy. But I do like exploring this through the character of Griffin and their general impulse driven but with a kind of a plan. And I think that the main like linchpin of all of this is like science, and how progression and moving forward is something to be welcomed and achieved. And there's like in an earlier issue, there is a conversation about like holding back science because of what evil can be done. Like it brings up a conundrum to do with that, and the character in question is like, no, like if you worry about that, then you'll attempt nothing. But I do think that by bringing it up, it does create an interesting conversation, because like what we've seen like in Silicon Valley and tech bros creating like facial recognition stuff that's now being used by like authoritarian governments, there is a question to be had about the consequences. But it's always more nuanced than, well, you shouldn't have created that technology, you should have thought about that, like all this stuff with like deep fakes and all that. But I think a lot of these things have to go hand in hand with like the right legislation and the right protections for people, and you can't just like snip one branch and expect everything to be fine. Like all of these things as a society have got to be in concert.
Well, that's the thing. I like that it doesn't, like you said, it's not didactic. It's not pausing the action to stare at the audience and say, haven't you thought about this? I like that it brings it up as like the philosophy of the characters as they're in play, and then just leaves it to you to think about what that means, or like the consequences of those actions. Because it's getting us talking about it instead of lecturing to us how we should feel about it. And I really appreciate stories that, you know, do that, where they give you enough of the pieces to think about. Like it puts this conundrum into context, lets you think about it in a fantastical setting, and then just leaves it with you to sit and ruminate on your own. I mean, I really dig that. I really like what it's doing, and I don't know. I feel like sometimes we need more of this stuff where it brings it up, and then it's kind of flip about it at the end, where it brings up these heady concepts and then sort of it dismisses it with like a raunchy joke. And it's not like it hasn't introduced it into your life. It's just it's not willing to give you all the answers, because there are no easy answers. And
also these characters don't really know the answers. They're like winging it to a degree.
Yeah, the impulse-driven nature of it is really interesting, because it's like, if it has any sort of thesis, it's like being chaotic good is better than being chaotic evil, or indeed chaotic neutral, I think. But yeah, I'm curious to see how it wraps up, because like you said, I don't think it's going to tie together all these threads. I think it's just a consequence of the way the characters live their lives, and I just want to see these people have like a nice send-off. I'm really invested in particularly the little scientist character. Want to see what they get up to, whether they get to like live out the rest of their life enjoying crazy science. So that's what I'm in it for. And yeah, I really dig it. I urge people to go check it out. I'm actually not sure what the purchase availability is like. I'm throwing you into it because I know you probably don't have the answers either, but do you think it's available as like a to buy floppy? Because we've been graciously provided the PDFs to read by Ben in order to review it for the cast. But I get the feeling it would, because they're normally 14-page issues. I get the sense that maybe they're not available in stores, but I'll definitely do a check and provide links at the end of the cast to let you know where you can actually purchase this, because I would recommend it.
Yeah, and like just before we hand off, with the latest issue we were given, chapter 11, we'd like to shout out Bruno Hidalgo's work on the art and colors. There's something really nice about the sort of color design for like different areas for the characters, and like extra elements inside there, like gas and like smoky entrails from weapons, the use of like blood on silhouettes, like all of it works really well and makes it like pop off the screen in my turn, but I would assume off the page if available physical as well. That it all has this really nice look to it that I love, and there's such it's structured in a way that, like you're saying, the pacing on it is like the way the panels are constructed, the way their relation to each other, the use of actions over time. All of it is like neat. It doesn't it doesn't get messy, even though you can have like lots of action. All of it is very coherent, and I quite enjoy that. And it's funny catching up on all this. There is like a reveal in like chapter 9, I think it is, that was so good. I thought like because I was already enjoying this, but the reveal in chapter 9 is so good and like flips the whole comic on its head in a way, and I really appreciated that, because it was a really cool gambit. Because at first you could sort of read it as sort of having its cake and eating it, because you've got a character who in the past has meant to have done some like really horrible things, and then you find out that no, there's a thing to do with like universes and alternate universes, stuff like that. But instead of feeling like a cheat, it actually feels so grounded and so like weighted in character and story and theme that it worked really well for me. So I'm looking forward to the final issue.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that reveal, especially because it becomes so late in the game, and again, not going to say what it really is, but yeah, that was really effective for me. That really worked. To touch on the art, because I did unfortunately gloss over Bruno Hidalgo's work, and I believe James Peñafiel, who does the color assistance, and Sal Cipriano on letters. The artwork is, like you said, the structure is quite Spartan in places. It's quite, bold, big, chunky panels with, big spaced guttering between them. But it's, I don't know, I think there's a charming simplicity to like the layout. And I think, I don't know, there's a lot of warmth in like how, I don't know, I want to say like messy is the wrong term. I haven't spent enough time thinking about how to express this. But there's a chunkiness to the character designs and everything as well. And I don't know, I feel like that's quite heartening. It gets you in, it makes you feel a little bit warmer to the characters, because there's a messiness to them. But yeah, I've dug the design of this since I started reading it. I think it feels like it almost feels like quick and dirty in a way, but it's not, because there's clearly a lot of love and time invested in the design of this thing. So I guess it might be a bit of a trick. Like, I don't know. I'd urge you to check it out yourselves, I guess. I'm a fan of all the color work. I'm a fan of the, there's a lot of like cool space cloud stuff, which I really like, I don't know if you know what I mean by that. It's like that sort of fluffy, bulbous space nebula sort of visual. Yeah, it's very funky. But yeah, that's Griffin. Griffin Most Wanted, in fact. And yeah, I'll leave a note in the show notes to let you know where you can pick that up. Moving on, I guess I can talk about the main comic that I read this week. That was called Don't Go Without Me by Rosemary Valero O'Connell. This is a book that's been published by Shortbox, which was originally via Kickstarter, and it's essentially a collection of 3 individual stories called Don't Go Without Me, What Is Left, and Con Temor con Tenora, which is Spanish for With Fear, With Tenderness. So I'm basically just going to read out the blurbs for each of these stories as I go through them one by one. So I'll start with Don't Go Without Me. The blurb for this is: 2 lovers sneak out for a night out on the town, a town where spirits and the supernatural exist as a realm within and alongside our world, with humans crossing over frequently. The lovers get separated and must barter with stories in exchange for clues as to where the other may be. But, unknown to them, each time they gain a morsel of information, they lose something too. So the way I would summarize this beautiful story is that this is doing it a disservice, but also it feels like high praise, honestly. It's Spirited Away, but for lovers. And it's also kind of funny to read this after I finished reading The City in the City by China Miéville, which I think I talked about on a previous cast. But that's also a story about layering and nesting of worlds, like being on the same strata, but like intangible to each other.
Yeah.
So we follow this character as she walks through this world, having been transported from our world into this other world as she's searching for her girlfriend. She walks through this world surrounded by creatures and demons who essentially like latch onto her and inhale and absorb her. When she talks, they breathe her in. When she describes her lover, they close their eyes and sort of get invested in all of it. And the story starts after she's been transported there, by surprise, not really expecting anything to actually happen. A cute but sinister winged snake thing asks her to tell them about her girlfriend in exchange for information on where she can find her, because she's lost and she's searching for her girlfriend. Because nothing in this world, as they say, can fill their bellies like stories can. So we get this extended sequence where she's describing her girlfriend in really intricate detail, in the way that only, in a really romantic way, in that only a way a lover can, with like romantic allegories and really personal affectations. And you can tell that she's kind of reveling in the telling of this person. Like she's clinging on to the idea of her with her words. She uses the words to remember her. But we can see that while she's speaking, we see that the demon she's speaking to starts to take on the form of the description she's giving. So previously, this demon had straight white hair, which then slowly becomes wavy and brown. And then she describes a freckle on her lover's face. And then the demon has a freckle where there wasn't before. And as once she's done revealing these details, the demon gives her like a really flippantly vague sense of where to find her. And then her journey continues. From there, she meets a trader with like seemingly sincere goals. But he tells her he doesn't have her girlfriend in this wagon full of strange and disquieting bric-a-brac that he carries with him. And so this trader and the person that he's with, they ask her, will no other person do? And she replies, no, there will not. And then she goes on to describe to them, because she knows that she has to give something away in order to get something in return. So she carries on describing her girlfriend to this new set of strangers. And the second description is less florid, it's more blunt. It's like she's lost the sense of the person she's looking for. And the trader recognizes that she's already given so much away and points her to a bar. And the bar is full of lecherous drinkers. And they're disappointed when she can't provide the details on this person that she's looking for. She's begun to fully lose a sense or the idea of this person that she wants to be with. And then from here, the story begins to unravel further. And I won't give the details, because I guess if I'm the person in the story, in doing so, in revealing the details, I'd evidently lose the sense of the details. And I really want to hold on to this story, because I don't know, it was really effective. It really touched me in a way that, like, in a really romantic sense of that longing of a person in all the different ways that can mean, to be longing for the idea of a person that you may no longer have access to. And like the art and structure of this book really supports the story it's telling. So first off, it's got a really limited color palette. It's shades of peach and brown and black and gray and white. And as with the story, it's a book in its art that luxuriates in the details, because so much attention is paid to details that aren't just about establishing a sense of place or a sense of personality or a sense of scale. It sort of like it opens with a few pages of full page art overlaid with almost like a stained glass circle effect. You know when you see those alcoves in churches where it's like a rectangle with a semicircle on top? And so like there's this really intricately detailed bottom bit and then sort of like a montage of other images above it. So we get these pages where we see our protagonist, who, the reason I'm saying protagonist or our hero is because we don't actually ever find out her name. We see our protagonist with her eyes closed and strangers discussing the idea of being transported into this other world where you have to stand at the top of these steps and close your eyes for 10 seconds. So we see a close-up of her face with her eyes closed, and above her there's a circle with pie segments where these different couples, these different strangers who are talking to each other about this story, we see snippets of them explaining in their various voices how to go about doing this magical process of, transporting over to this other world. And there are some really spectacular moments where the idea of being lost in the details is sold by the way the panels shrink and change on the page. So where previously the story was being told in these large page-filling panels, suddenly when she's giving her florid description of her girlfriend, we see her face suddenly hemmed into these long, thin panoramic boxes, which are then overlaid onto a backdrop of billowing clouds. And there's a really palpable sense of quietness to those moments where it's selling the sense that she's reliving those details for herself in order to describe it to the strangers that she's telling the story to. And it's almost like it's for herself and not just for the greedy critters, the greedy demons. And there's so many moments of this kind of contrast in the book, not just in the panel arrangements like I just described, but also like contrast in the color work and the scale of the characters, because a lot of these demons have a different sense of scale than our human protagonist. Like the first demon she encounters is this tiny cute little thing, and they come up to her and like really sensuously caress her and like look her in the face and give her compliments to sort of wheedle her into, to like lull her into this sense of giving, which she doesn't realize is a tragedy. She shouldn't be lulled into this sense of like giving so much away, but she's tricked into it essentially. Another thing I really like is there's a lot of focus placed onto our protagonist's hair. Like, she's a young brown woman with thick, dark, curly hair, and you can tell there's so much attention placed onto the way that the light plays off of this, like, of curly hair, and really makes the most use out of its limited color palette, where like you can see the shininess of her hair, like just expressed with these peaches and these browns. And I really like that. I think the style is quite flowery and kind of cute in a minimalist way, but not cute in the Ghibli sense, which is, because I alluded to Spirited Away earlier. It's cute in a minimalist way, which is then bolstered by an attention to detail into the squeamish and like disquieting specifics of both the, I don't know if the word is like anatural, where there's like an odd and romantic density to the world, where it's like there's so much detail, but not in a messy sort of dizzying way. Sorry, maybe it is quite dizzying. The sense I'm trying to get is it's not chaotic in the way that makes you feel like sickened to look
or
at.
Lost,
Yeah, I mean, there is a sense of being lost, because I think that comes off the page with how like dislocated she is in this whole new place, and suddenly without the person that she's supposed to be with. I'm thinking more like I'm thinking of like Greg brings up James Stokoe a lot, and we read Alien Isolation or Alien something by him a couple of years ago, and that was a lot of detail with the intent to make you feel a bit sick or a bit grimy. I thought this doesn't have that. This is like you can get lost in the detail, in that kind of Ghibli-esque way where everything is kind of hyper real, but then it's also really gruesomely inhuman. Not disgusting, not like gruesome in the sense of like it being violent necessarily, but like fleshy, toothy, sinister demons, eyeballs, like splotches of nondescript fluids and whatever. Like, I don't know, like there's a real sense of disquiet, I think, is how I would say it. And ultimately it culminates in quite a sweet moment that I don't want to give away too much, but I think the themes of the story of like of seeking your lover like really come together in a really nice way. And that's just 1/3 of this book. So I'm going to go on to the next story called What Is Left. And the synopsis for this is: a ship that runs on the memories of one of its occupants malfunctions and collapses in on itself in the dead of space. Alive but trapped, an engineer who survives the wreckage finds herself in this reservoir of memories, stranded alone in a patchwork dream of someone else's life. And the first thing I noticed is that where we previously had peaches and browns and grays, the color palette suddenly shifts into pinks, dark blues, violets, lilacs, lavenders, and whites. And it begins with a really beautiful and terrifying display of like hyper stylized fluids exploding in space. So like imagine if Hubba Bubba or like Pepto Bismol was like you know, like, what it reminded me of. This is a really irritating touch point because it doesn't like this. I'm gonna bring up Star Trek 2009. You know, you have the big red ball at like I forgot what it's called, but like it's like a big red ball of matter which is used to destroy planets. It kind of brings to mind that, but if it was made of Pepto-Bismol and that thing exploded and splooshed outwards, and if it was unleashed into a space station and had like a mild, beautiful sentience where it knew how to spread and slosh in a beautifully congealed and rounded way before finally erupting in a cloud of weirdly comfortable-looking doom.
That sounds horrifying.
It's equally kind of gorgeous and horrifying in equal measure because it does really accurately show that there's an unnaturalness to the way that this thing is spreading, but it's also quite like, I don't know, it's also quite sensuous in a weird way because of like how like dripping and bulbous it all feels. Anyway, the story is almost exactly what the synopsis says. It feels really filmic. Like we follow this engineer who's trapped in the memories of this other woman, and she very softly and carefully weaves her way through the memories of this stranger, unable to interact but only observe. And as she does so, she engages with her sense of self at the same time, like being the sole survivor. She is a ghost in this other woman's life that she's making her way through. I don't know if the synopsis accurately explains this, but the concept is that this like I guess faster than light sort of travel spaceship is literally powered by the concept of memory. So this one person has to. It's not quite clear if it's a sacrifice or it's just it's a voluntary thing where it doesn't. I think it says at the start it doesn't actually harm the volunteer, but the person has to go into stasis and it's essentially like all the moments of her life are revealed, all the moments of her life are laid open to bear and then utilized as fuel, which is a really interesting concept. And like it's all very sweet because our hero, again, unnamed hero, as she wanders through this stranger's life, she ruminates on who this person is and whether this stranger would have liked her if they'd have gotten to know each other better, because they were present in each other's space as both being participants or both occupants of the spaceship, but they sort of gave each other cursory hellos like colleagues. And now she's sort of trapped in her dream and will never know if they would have gotten along. And like Don't Go Without Me, it does also luxuriate in its details. It's almost like it's an excuse for the writer to pace her way through like a lifetime in brief, and it really works. It has a more organic and dreamlike quality than Don't Go Without Me, because it begins with our hero stumbling around in wonder, sort of like not really knowing what's going on, and the experiences she's being fed are sort of holistic, like they're fed to her. And yeah, so each of the different images and the frames, they spill into each other quite fluidly, breaking consistency in scale and environment to leave like a really interesting sense of dislocation, like an unconscious stream of thought series of images. And then as she begins to settle into what she realizes is this woman's memories, and also possibly the end of her own life, being kept alive by the fuel of this stranger's memories, the panels begin to solidify. It's like she begins to get a grounding in the scenario she's in. And then she starts becoming a navigator, a captain of this dreamscape. And she spends less time silently observing or questioning, and begins like a one-sided conversation with the stranger, telling her stories about her own life, which overlap with the scenes she's observing. And this also, I feel like it culminates in a really touching way. Like it's all these each of these stories is one like perfectly cohesed series of vignettes which self-support its own thesis, I think. So this one, where the first one is about love, this one is about loss, and the loss of the life that you could have lived or the life that somebody else has lived. And that idea of Sonder, not realizing that this other person had their whole other entire life, and there are so many overlaps that she never got to know about this person she'll never get to know, and it's extremely sweet. And I think this was my favorite of the three stories that are in this book. And then I won't spend so much time on the last one because I kind of rushed my way through this final story, but it was called Con Temor Con Tenora, with fear, with tenderness. So synopsis is: for years, the residents of a small oceanside town have been living in the shadow of a sleeping giant who is prophesied one day to wake up and lay their world to waste. As the foreseen date of their impending doom draws near, the town decides to put on a festival on that very same night to celebrate their lives and face whatever fate awaits them together. So where the previous color palettes were like browns, oranges, pinks, violets, this is mostly gray and white and black with splashes of red and orange. And I think there's a reason it has that color palette, and it's the reason it's the final story in here, because it's about connection at the end of things, and a lot of that color palette brings to mind like sunsets and the ending of days, and the story itself sort of revolves around the idea of this sleeping giant who wakes up as the sun sets. And it's a really sweet, like tender look into the way that people behave when they know that there's a potential for their time to come to an end. They don't know exactly what's going to happen. They don't know for sure whether this giant's going to wake up. They don't know for sure what the giant will do if and when it wakes up. All they know is that they have this concept of a day to celebrate or a day to mourn, and it's showing the different ways that the people of this town choose to spend their final moments. And it's extremely touching. I really liked seeing all the different ways and the different concepts of the way that people find meaning in their final moments. And essentially, it's all about they find meaning in each other. They find meaning in the comfort of companionship and giving time to the people who mean something to you. And it's extremely nice. Like overall, I really, really, really like this book. I think it has so much value to it, and like what I don't know. I think you should read it. I really think you in particular would enjoy it, Leon, because it's a very it's comics in the way that I really like, where it's not just a prescribed series. It's not just linear stories, like sometimes I get a bit tired of the Marvel comic book thing where it's like story from A to B and how a narrative works. It's doing something different with the medium. It's doing like a slightly more I use the word holistic too much, but like it's doing that thing where it wants you to dive into the concepts and just fall into the pages, luxuriating the art the way that the characters are luxuriating in their scenarios. And it really worked for me. I mean, maybe I was in the right place at the right time for it. I picked it up from Gosh Comics, and then I was waiting for my girlfriend to run an errand, and I sat in a cafe and read this book from cover to cover in one sitting while like surrounded by cool like lo-fi hip hop and a cup of coffee. And I think maybe that was the perfect place for something that's so somber but also uplifting. Like it was perfect. I loved it.
It's definitely a picture you've painted.
Yeah, I mean I think that's why I could be so florid with how I felt about it, which is something I do often struggle with when it comes to these stories, or describing comics in general, is where I can do a stark description of what is on the page and what the story is, but this gave me a real sense of like how I felt about it. Like I knew how I felt about it coming out of this book, and that is quite a rarity for me. That's something I generally only get from movies, I think, because that medium particularly speaks to me with the way it presents emotion, or the way it presents these kind of moments. And I don't know, there's something, I don't want to discredit the book by calling it very filmic, because it's obviously not. It's working to the strength of its medium really well. But for me, the fact that it can make me feel the way I feel when watching film is, I don't know, I think that's astounding. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I want to pick up. We were talking about it previously, like pre-cast, and yeah, it looks great. Like I love the art style, and it sounds like it's doing a lot of really cool things and playing with the medium in a really fun way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I don't know if you know any of the other works by the illustrator. I think I mentioned Rosemary Valero O'Connell. She was also the illustrator for Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me, which...
Yeah. That's where I recognised the name.
You haven't... Have you read that one?
Yeah, I have.
Right. Okay. I see. And generally, like, I can't remember how you felt about it, but that was a thumbs up, right?
That was on a cast where I wasn't able to be on there last minute, but I really enjoyed that bit.
Okay. Well, we'll have to... I think I'm gonna pick up that one next. In fact, so maybe for the next cast we can have a conversation about that book.
Oh, definitely. Like I just loved that style, and it really complemented like and it's something that we talk about a lot on here, where not just art being cool or being an aesthetic that we really we find visually pleasing, but when there's almost like a symbiosis or something where everything is working in tandem, and the art is just complementing the story. Not really complementing, because the art is the story as well, but you know what I mean, like the writing and the art feel like they're one. When that happens, it's really nice.
Yeah, for sure. Also want to shout out the quality of this book, the production, literally the tangible quality of this book. Because I was skimming through the Kickstarter campaign, which ended in November 2019. But a lot of the different goals were, one, just have the book be ready for production, and then some of the later ones were to introduce like French folds, which are the nice little flaps on the inside of the jacket. And then another one was gold embossing on the cover, and they clearly hit all their goals, because all of the features in that Kickstarter campaign are now available in my hand. And the book itself is really pretty. Like, for a start, the pages are printed beautifully. Like that limited color palette I talked about isn't a sign of like making compromise. It's a very considered stylistic choice, and each story really pops off the page really well. There's like a really high level of quality to it, and the cover itself with the gold embossing, like, I don't know, because it's so restrained. It's like it's a silhouette of this girl in like these really sort of suffused pastely pinks and blues and violets, and looking out of like, I think a bus window into this fantasy land where she sees a version of herself sort of tearing open, and in the split in her face there's like another face inside, made out of this gold embossed image. And it's really striking. And then also the author's name in that self-same gold embossing, which is, I think, like, if you could put your name in gold on a book, like, why wouldn't you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'll lend it to you if you can't find it for yourself. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say on that one. Did you want to move on to one of your books now, Leon?
Yeah. I will talk about Parable of the Sower, a graphic novel adaptation. So this is a comic based on the 1993 novel by Octavia E. Butler. The comic itself is written by Damien Duffy, and the art and colors are done by John Jennings, and it's published by Abrams Comic Art. The team previously did the award-winning adaptation of Butler's Kindred, and I believe the next book is going to be another adaptation of one of her books. And so, like, in the past, I've obviously, Octavia E. Butler is a legendary sci-fi author who I think passed in 2006, and wrote a bunch of series like the Patanist series, the Exogenesis series. I had previously only read two of her books, and that was Kindred, which is great, and Bloodchild and Other Stories. And I'd always heard good things about the two Parable books, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents, but I'd never got around to it. And I was almost hesitant to jump in with the graphic novel, because I thought, oh, it'd be cool to have read the book and then I can compare how effective it is. Because I haven't yet read the Kindred book, but after reading this, I'm definitely going to.
Yeah, if I can just very quickly chime in, because like I thought I recognized the name, and then now that you've explained that it's Octavia Butler who wrote Kindred, I remember there was a conversation around the time that Black Panther came around where everyone was talking about Afrofuturism and like sci-fi, as written by Black authors, and Kindred came up a lot or sci-fi fantasy. I think Kindred was one of those that came up at that time, and it's been on my list for a while, in fact. So I didn't realize, one, there was a graphic novel made of Kindred, or indeed other stories by Octavia Butler. So that's a revelation to me. I'm gonna seek this out next, I think.
Yeah, I'd definitely recommend that. I'm looking forward to reading the graphic novel as well. And so, like, Parable of the Sower, I'll just read what they put on Wikipedia because it's a good capturing of the basic plot. But it's set in the 2020s, where society has largely collapsed due to climate change, growing wealth inequality, and corporate greed. Well, that's unrealistic. I thought this was sci-fi. This is science fantasy. Parable of the Sower centers on a young woman named Lauren Oya Olamina, who possesses what Butler dubbed hyper-empathy or sharing. And that is the ability to feel pain and other sensations she witnesses. As a teenager growing up in the remnants of a walled community not too far from LA, she begins to develop a new belief system, which she comes to call Earthseed. And then I will not read the rest because I think it tells you too much. But yeah, it basically goes from there, and then there's an inciting incident which changes this into a bit more of a survival story. But yeah, it's dystopian from the jump. But yeah, so not having read the book yet, I can only go off how the comic is and not as an adaptation. But as a comic, it is it's pretty effective. It's pretty brilliant because the way how, at least at the beginning, it's sort of written as like in the style of diary entries with interstitials. So we get a lot of text boxes which appear to be written on lined paper, and it's and between each like jump in time, we get Lauren's sort of building the foundations of this Earthseed concept, and that sort of comes from the fact that her dad is a preacher. So there's a lot of pushing and pulling between like religion and people's roles in society and what's expected of you, especially what's expected of you as a survivor in this awful time and being a young African American woman. But yeah, I was just this book, like it definitely paints a picture that is very bleak, especially early on. It's this is like full dystopia with a capital D. It's but it's not in like an endless misery way, and it's not in a sort of grayed out the road way. It's more framed in a way of like, so we spend a lot of time at the beginning inside one of these walled communities, and to get certain things done, like some people just never leave. And that's usually like older people, the infirm, they just stay at home and the community looks after itself, and you have your normal neighborhood beefs and friendships. But outside the walls, some people have to work outside the walls, and going outside is very dangerous. And we get a lot of pages of the general structure of this world. So Lauren's dad is very big on like making sure kids know how to use a gun. Like, this is how horrible this world is. So when they're young, and I think they get like properly get their own gun at like 16 or something like that, but they have to go out and like hunt and it's like the scavenger animals that are left out. So like you have just feral dogs and like birds, and they have to get rid of these things because now they're pests, because things like food are scarce, so they can't have them eating up the seeds that have been planted. And yeah, like the way all of this stuff is rendered, you're taken through this world of just day-to-day survival. It's almost mundane. And we get anecdotes and stories about people from the neighborhood, or people that the lead character knew in the past, and like you just get these little snippets. Like I say, a lot of it is just feel like you're getting diary entries, and you get like these little snippets into that tell you so much about the world. Like one early on that I won't spoil too much, but there's one early on about an older lady in the community who's died one day, and we get a little snippet into her, how she wasn't she was very religious, like conventionally religious, and she wasn't a fan of the of certain people. She didn't like Lauren's dad because he married a Latino woman. She wasn't a fan of the Asian American couple, even though when she got robbed, the whole community, including the Asian American couple, all like donated stuff that they had to replace the things that were stolen from her. And it does show you this sort of tenuous push and pull. Like elements of that kind of remind me of Do the Right Thing, where the Spike Lee movie from '89, where you have this community of communities pushed together, and they have to survive in this, like, using, I guess, the magic word of this episode for me again, symbiosis of how they thrive off each other because each person has a different role in this world, and how that, like, as things start to crumble, as systems start to crumble, people have sort of turned insular and looked after themselves. And like playing in the background on a general macro sense, you have a like authoritarian president who's risen up, and like capitalism has reached its full end stage, where you're basically getting like work towns where you basically are owned by the company to a degree. Like they'll give you housing and food and stuff, and then you just work for them in perpetuity. And it brings up a lot of these things, and it's really prescient, and like it is wild that the original book was written in '93. And I've heard this about Octavia E. Butler's work in the past on some of the novels I haven't read, in that she is so on the money in terms of her like future predictions, because the book starts off in 2024, and like the comparisons with this like presidential figure are very like Trump. And people might read this now and be like, oh god, another Trump allegory or whatever, because they might not know that this is adapted from a book from '93. But it's so, it just nails that, and it does show you that in the rise of like subtle, which is like, I guess inverted commas, because a lot of that stuff isn't subtle subtle at the moment, but it is subtle, where people can sort of gaslight you and say that's not happening. This isn't Hitler again, because of X, Y, Z. But it shows you how those things can sort of quickly take over, and there is a roadmap of authoritarianism where you can promise people things who are in a certain position and move forward. Because like I think the main thing we have at the beginning of this is that we've made it to Mars, and people are decrying that the Mars mission and the money that this book's version of NASA are wasting money, because on Earth we need that money. People barely got food and water, and like at the end of their like tether, and we're wasting all this money on space. So there's like big discussions to do with that, and the presidential nominee at the time is saying that on like my first 100 days I will like just X that out, like it's a waste of money. And that's playing to like populist anxiety and fears at the time, and this is like for us, it's vocalized by Lauren's dad, who her reverend dad, who is like, yeah, what's the point of this? And there's so many little asides or just little comments that Lauren will make while giving us a sort of commentary that just tell you so much in so little. And I'm really interested in how it's presented in the book. I think that the adaptation, from what I can tell, is really good, because if I didn't know that this was based on a book, you just wouldn't know. Like the way the panels are used, the way the story is like doled out to us, it feels so natural for the art form. The way how Lauren's like hyper empathy is shown, where we get like visual representations of what she's feeling. So there are people who've just got disease outside the walls, and no one's got money or the ability to get themselves cleaned up. And so whenever she has to leave the walls, it's an awful time, because they're all riding on bikes, and they have to go through the equivalent of like the shanty towns, and anything that she sees, like she can feel it. So she sees someone with like disease sores on their face, and she can feel it. She can see someone with like missing an arm, and she can feel it. She can like
a literal empath.
Feel the pain, the loss, yeah. And the way it's presented is so stark but so honest that you can feel it, and it manages to give you empathy for her having hyper empathy. But yeah, going through this, it's someone like struggling, or more so struggling against society and what it's imposing, and where their faith lies. And it asks and answers a lot of really existential questions, but it never feels soapboxy or like preachy in a way. A lot of it is very matter of fact, and that's where we get with like sort of the dire and depressing circumstances. But the tale of survival is inspiring, and it makes for like a really good read. Like I haven't even spoken about so like I mentioned how Damien Duffy did a really good job adapting this, like the words, but the art and colors by John Jennings are gorgeous. Like really makes the ugly look beautiful, which is a very douchey thing to say. But like it is so good. Like it's hard to explain, because I'm not good at explaining different art styles, so forgive me. I don't have the art history knowledge to really effectively talk about this stuff, but I'll try my best. But the way it's done, it's like painterly style in ways. So some of this, where it's close to the diary entries, it looks like it's not doodles, but artwork that Lauren has put in her book. And then the rest of the stuff has this, it's like a mix of like paint style, especially the backgrounds, where instead of things just being done with like, you have an outline, a black outline, and then color filled inside. Instead, the outlines are the color itself, and you just have lots of like striking lines, creating the definition within the color, and you've got like so much blending of tones and shading that it not only creates like sort of a depth and 3D sort of feeling, but it also it gives texture and I don't know, a tangibility to the world while still looking really good. Because at times it looks kind of like street art, where like spray canned graffiti style, especially the way how like outer colors are used and like outlining around characters, or like character shading, like it just
you can tell there's a layering happening. Like there's an undersurface and then a top surface, and then because I'm looking at the previews on the Amazon page right now, and like I can see what you're saying about how they've got the highlights around the edges of the character after, like, as a post definition thing. So they've like with street art or with graffiti, it would be layered up from the bottom outwards and then outlined at the end. Like, I get that sense of it, and it feels quite earthy as well from what I can see.
Because it has a very consistent color palette for what's going on and how it's going on. And at the beginning, you get a lot of browns, and they're in dry, arid California, so you get a lot of browns and oranges and like earthy tones. And then those are broken up by things like Lauren's earrings, which are gold, or there's a bit near the beginning where there's one couple has like, so it's in the future, so there's these like wall-sized TVs, but like in a Children of Men style, it's progress. The progress is further than where we are now, but it stopped and then never got better. So they bought this TV like 10 years ago, and it's the only one still working in the neighborhood, unless everyone else has got at best a tiny little box TV. So they would invite the whole neighborhood, and people would pay money to be able to watch the TV, and that's how they're watching like the Mars mission. And there's a whole thing of like, oh, it could break at any moment, and like we know that the sound on it is getting wonky now and fuzzy, and at any time now that TV could die. But while it's alive, it's this whole thing that the community goes to, and during those scenes, you have the like really strong blues as the sort of the light of the TV colors the walls and lays on the characters, and it just has this really good consistent look to it that just makes it so appealing to read, despite some of sort of the like dour situations. And like I mentioned here a lot, I like clarity. I do like. That's not to say I don't like very impressionistic artwork. I love that as well, but I do like a lot of clarity, and some of the like panels used here they just get to the point, and just they tell you a lot about what's going on in that situation as it's being told, but they also tell you a lot about like what's outside the borders, what's outside the gutters, like what is happening in this world. We get snippets, and like it's like Children of Men, where you're given a little that tells you a lot about the world, and you pick up so much just from thinking, oh man, so if that's like this, I wonder what X is like. And I think that is just, it's a good way to pull you in, and it does make this book a like the definition of like a page turner, because you just want to see what's going on. And because it has some time skips in it during the story, a lot happens, but like you don't get every little single detail about that, and that works in a good way, because it's not ambiguous in a bad way. It's more like, okay, these are the main actions, but this is what the world's like, and this is what can happen if certain things are left unchecked. And I know I really like that, and to mirror back to you, like I would highly recommend giving this a read.
Well, I'm skipping through the first. I think I've got access to the first 20 pages on Amazon, so I got a couple of things I want to touch on, like the way you were describing the art. Would you say how do you feel about if I said it's reminding me of you know, when you go to like big cities or like European cities and there's artists doing chalk paintings on the sidewalk or the pavements? It feels a little bit like that, which I think points to the graffiti street art thing you were saying, where like I feel like it's big chunky blocks of chalk that are then being, or like charcoal being laid on top of each other.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because I've got that in my notes. I just didn't say it. So we're in sync. We're in sync.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Like, it's very chalky, and even just the way like some of the panels are done. So a lot of the panels you'll just have like white gutters, or you'll just have normal sort of like super straight like panel boxes. And then some, especially ones which are to do with memory and telling a story that happened in the past, they're like hand drawn, and they have like a chunky like quality to them where they're not exactly straight, but they I don't know, they feel like bulky and thick, but in a very sort of like, you can see like the imperfection of the person if it was done in chalk, like as they let go of pressure to lift the chalk up and the lines change a bit. Like there's a very sort of real grounded feel to it. But yeah, the line work's beautiful.
It does feel very like tangible. Like again, like I'm in my head, I'm getting this idea of somebody literally like holding a piece of chalk as like a knife in a stabbing motion in their hand and like scratching onto the floor or on the wall or something. It's that sort of sense of it where it's quite straight lined and angular in places. Like the way that like I'm looking at a shot of the like a crow picking at another dead bird or something, and like I don't know, just the angles of the shape of this thing where you can tell that the outlines are sort of being roughly strewn on top of the block color of the body. Like it's really cool. It's really interesting art.
Yeah, and like having all of that texture, it's still really clear, and all the characters, like because sometimes you'll find with some books, especially ones that feature a lot of characters like this does, sometimes we spend like one panel or something with some characters as we move through, but like every character has such a unique idiosyncratic look to them, and I really appreciate that because there's no like uniformity amongst them at all, and everyone is like very different shades, and it really fits like the location of where it's set. It just looks great.
Yeah, I think I've picked up on this in the past because I was looking for other books to read after reading the Expanse series, and I think I've heard people talk about like how this could almost be a precursor to those books if it was like a slightly more gritty, or I don't know, because the thing that I kind of missed from the Expanse books is they're really fun, down to earth, sort of like semi-hard sci-fi, where it's all about like, you know, there's no faster than light travel. It's all about like the politics of having like a government on Earth and then a separate government on Mars, and how they conflict in the interceding like space between, literally the space between planets. And I've been told that this is like, it gives you more of the social dynamic, like what it means to be on the ground as a human, if the Earth wasn't like this pristine, almost like Star Trek utopian thing. Yeah, is that right? Do you think that tracks?
That sounds very accurate. I mean, I can't really delve into what happens later, but yeah, that sounds very, very accurate.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely curious. Like even just looking through the artwork, it looks really good. How big is it? Like how many? And it's a hard question to ask over audio, but like how long did it take you to read through this?
Not too long. It's about, what is it? Let me get the thing. Oh yeah, it's 272 pages, and that's more like 250 with all. Actually, it's less than that. It's more like 240 or something of actual stuff, and then there's like extra stuff in here, which is worth a read. But like, yeah, it didn't take too long. I got through it in like a couple of hours, and I was reading really slowly.
Cool, because yeah, I've just been looking at like how, so John Jennings is the illustrator, and he's also the one responsible, I think you said this, for the Kindred graphic novel.
Yeah. It's the same team.
Right. I'm super interested. It's annoying because like where I had no books to read, now I've suddenly got 4. But yeah, it's added to my list already.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I will say about this book, so I got it on Comixology, and it looks gorgeous. Often with these books where it's like graphic novels that are usually creator owned, I've been veering more towards like physical for some reason. I know they just feel good in the hand, even though I prefer reading stuff on my iPad. But this is one that I bought because I just wanted to read it there and then. But I think for Kindred, I might check out the physical.
Well, it's funny you bring up the hardcover because I'm looking at it on Amazon. The title will be released tomorrow in hardcover for Parable of the Sower.
Nice.
So I don't think you wouldn't have been able to read it in physical before now anyway. But I guess that's a really current pick then. I guess when did let's see if I can see when it actually came out.
I think it was a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay. I see. It's really current. Okay.
Yeah, highly recommended.
Cool. Great. So that's all the books that me and Leon wanted to cover for this week. Greg has left me with some comics on his pull list for me to read out for you guys. So let's have a look. So for the 26th of February, he wants me to bring up Fantastic Four Grim Noir #1, Finger Guns #1, Giant-Sized X-Men, Jean Grey and Emma Frost #1, Ice Cream Man #18, which is one that I was going to point out, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Jennika #1, and something called Tomorrow #1 as well. Lots of #1s to catch up on. I don't know how he's going to find the time to read all these while he's busy doing his housework.
He'll find the time.
Yeah, I don't doubt it, but like at the behest of fixing his bathroom, I hope he actually like gets his shower installed as a priority over these comics. But you never know with him. And then for the 4th of March, we've got King of Nowhere #1, Strange Adventures #1, which he's taken pains to point out that me and Leon are going to like this one. We're going to like this one apparently, so we'll keep an eye out for that for next time. And then also Superman Villains #1. So many #1s. Where does he find the time or the energy?
2020, baby.
God, it's the year of comics. This is the year that like he's going to have to start reducing his load-bearing stack because like I'm assuming his ceilings are higher than they were before. So he's either going to fill up the stack or like take it as a sign to not have a stack anymore. I know he's gone full into the digital thing, but let's hope he I don't know what I'm getting at. I just hope he still enjoys this hobby as much as he used to now that he's got like different responsibilities.
At this point, I think it's not even a hobby; it's like a raison d'être.
I know this is his reason for being. It's just the reason he exists is to be a consumer of comic art, which is, let's be honest, it's not a bad life. Cool. So you can find us at basically at www.acecomicals.com. That's the hub for everything. You can find us on iTunes, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, a bunch of other places. Basically, if you want to listen to us and you're not already listening to us, which is weird because you're hearing my voice telling you about listening to us, but if you want to listen to us, acecomicals.com. Twitter at acecomicals. You can reach me on Twitter at Monkey. That's MOONKEH. How about you, Leon?
You can find me on Twitter at Leon Everett.
Cool. That's Ace Comicals. Over and out.